So today, the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, we are publishing the 2024 State of Housing in Harris County and Houston report. This year is the 5th iteration of this report, and this year we are so grateful in that our report was made possible with support from Wells Fargo. Today, we will reveal some of the key findings of the report and have a conversation with our esteemed panelists about what we found and what it means. And so with that, let's get going with getting out this year's findings from the 2024 State of Housing Report for Harris County and Houston. And to share those findings from this year's report, I'm going to turn the show over to our research scientist here at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, who led this year's study, Dr. Steve Sherman.
Thank you for the introduction, Dan, and thank you everyone for showing up this morning. I'm here to present some brief key findings from this year's report. So, as Dan mentioned, this is year 5 of the State of Housing Report. And the previous year's report focused on renting and renters. And this year's report looks at the other side of the housing market, on homeowners and home buying and home ownership. And this focus on home ownership arose in conversation both internally within the Institute and with an advisory council of local leaders from organizations highlighted here. And I want to thank them for making time during their very, very busy work days for us. So, research asserts that despite the well-publicized challenges in the housing and loan markets, home ownership is still a good investment with a high rate of return. And that aside, people locally still like the idea of owning a home. According to a survey fielded to the Kinder Institute's Greater Houston Community Panel, 8 out of 10 Harris County residents see home ownership as a good way to build wealth, and 9 out of 10 see it as an important milestone to adulthood. So home ownership is popular, a good investment, and also something that puts a roof over your head. Yet home ownership locally has become harder and harder to achieve. Like elsewhere in the country, home prices appreciated a lot during and through the COVID-19 pandemic, increasing 25% in the city and more than 43% in overall Harris County from 2018 to 2023, so pre and post-pandemic. And in both areas, the median cost of a home exceeds $300,000. So if homeowning is a good thing that people want, it raises the question, can people afford homes at this price? Has their purchasing power increased? The answer is no. The median Harris County household cannot afford homes at these current prices, meaning homeownership, that good thing, is out of reach. I'm going to take a minute here to illustrate this. So in 2018, based upon the median household income in Harris County from that year, a median household could afford a home that was about $186,000, assuming they're not spending more than 30% of their income towards housing. However, the median home price that year was $220,000. Now come 2023, because of stagnant wage growth that was less than inflation and currently high interest rates, an affordable home in 2023 was only about $189,000, an increase of only 1%. Yet while the median household's purchasing power only went up 1% from 186 to 189,000, the median home price increased 43%, reaching $315,000 by 2023. And that affordability gap between what people could afford and the homes out there for sale increased 275%. Purchasing power is not keeping up. The silver lining, if there is one, is that Houston is not in as dire straits as our peer cities. So all of our peer cities, the other large cities in Texas, plus the metropolitan centers and metro areas with similar size across the country, across multiple home ownership metrics like the affordability gap and others, scored worse than us, except for San Antonio. What this means is that at least relative to these other big cities, we have less climbing to do to get out of our unaffordability hole, lest we risk losing for good our reputation as an affordable place to buy a home, which Austin certainly has. Other topics covered in the report this year include data on Fort Bend and Montgomery County, the two largest suburban counties in the metro, and places where home ownership has increased a lot, increasing 58% and 48% in Fort Bend and Montgomery, respectively, since 2010. And since 2010, these two counties put together have added as many owner-occupied households as all of Harris County, despite only having about a third of the population. And as of 2022, about 3/4 of the households in these counties are homeowners, compared to only 54% in Harris County. So, turning the focus onto Harris even more in search of perhaps an explanation, one thing that stands out is that the county is running out of affordable neighborhoods. Of the county's 143 neighborhoods, only 7 have homes which are affordable to a household earning the county-wide median income. And even for a family earning $100,000 that's doing relatively well, a majority of neighborhoods aren't affordable. And those places that are affordable have significantly lower income households, prompting gentrification concern. Following this, we looked at gentrification through the lens of increasing assessed value of sold homes, gathering information through a novel analysis of HCAD data. And from 2017 to 2022, sold homes in the county appreciated 46% in only 5 years. And we mapped home appreciation and sales along other indicators of gentrification, focusing on race, ethnicity, and social class changes. And from this, we found that about 1 in 10 neighborhoods in the county had indicators of gentrification, with implications and further analysis detailed in the report. Lastly, we also examined demographic patterns in homeownership across the region. We found 2 Houston neighborhoods which lost more than 1,000 Black homeowners since 2010, and the city of Houston overall has fewer Black homeowners in 2022 than in 2010. But evidence from this year's report shows that it is Houston's suburbs where homeownership is increasingly reflecting the region's diversity. For example, while the share is still relatively small, in Montgomery County, the share of homeowners who are Black doubled from 2% to 5% from 2010 to 2022. And Black homeownership increased beyond Beltway 8 in Harris County. And yes, while 2 neighborhoods lost more than 1,000 Black homeowners, 10 neighborhoods gained more than 1,000, but they were all beyond Beltway 8. Furthermore, all 3 counties in the study area had an increased share of homeowners who are Hispanic, and notably about 1/4 of Fort Bend's homeowners are Asian. Before turning it over to our esteemed panelists to discuss the findings, I'd like to point you to 2 things. First, a lot more detail about the methodology and these numbers, along with many other notable findings, are in the text of this year's report. And through the QR code on the screen, you can access that report and also an interactive dashboard produced by members of our Urban Data Platform team, who I want to thank now publicly because they did a great job. And that dashboard has all of the data used in this year's report down at the neighborhood level, which you can either map or download as an Excel file and explore to sate your own curiosity. And now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Potter and our esteemed panel.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Steve, for that run through of the findings. And obviously, for anyone interested in reading more about it, please do check out the report. Definitely more details there and more insights to gain from that. Thank you so much, Steve, for that overview of our findings this year. So with that, to help us unpack these findings and talk about what that means for Houston, we've got 3 local experts joining us for today's webinar. Thank you to each of our panelists, starting with a thank you to each of our panelists for being here and sharing your insights. And so again, for our audience members, if you've got questions you'd like to raise about what Steve has shared or about as things are getting talked through with our panelists, please go ahead and get those things in that Q&A button here on Zoom. And so to start with, again, thank you panelists for joining. Let's do some introductions. And if we could, we'll just do a quick round robin of introductions here, starting Allison Hay, do you mind getting us going here? You are returning with us after being a part of our first webinar for our State of Housing report back in 2020. So if you don't mind real fast, who are you? And talk to us about your role here in the housing sector in Houston.
Thank you so much for inviting me back. It's such an important topic. Hello, my name is Allison Hay. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Houston Habitat for Humanity for over 10 years. I am a native Houstonian. Since 1987, Houston Habitat advocated for affordable housing in Houston and in Harris County. We've built and provided affordable mortgage for over 1,200 families, and we repaired over 850 homes since 2015, primarily due to damages of Harvey and Winter Storm Uri. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, Allison. Christa?
Good morning. My name is Christa Stoneham. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and President of the Houston Land Bank. I have proudly served in this role for a little over 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was on the board and served with the City of Houston for almost 10. I am a trained architect and a community development professional, originally from California, where I've seen firsthand what gentrification with displacement looks like, and very grateful to be here with you all. Thank you.
We are grateful to have you here, Christa. And finally, Mike.
Good morning. I'm Mike Nichols. I'm the relatively new Director of Community Development and Housing for the City of Houston. I've been in this job appointed by Mayor John Whitmire since March. Before that, I spent 5 years as the CEO and President of the Coalition for the Homeless for Houston, Harris County, Montgomery, and Fort Bend County. When we discuss what the housing department is in Houston, what it means, what it does, the best way I can describe it is we're like a big bank that uses federal funding, state funding, and local funding to promote and build and help people build affordable housing. Our partners are the Houston Housing Authority that also helps us in this work and helps in that work, Harris County's Community Development Department, and along with Harris County's Housing Authority. All of those focus on making Houston and Harris County the area with the most affordable housing in the country. Thanks so much for having me.
It is our honor to have you all here. We are looking forward to you all bringing each of your expertise as well as your experiences to this discussion. So let's get this teed up. I think we need to start by acknowledging in some ways, this is the 5th year of us doing this report, State of Housing here in Houston and Harris County. The accusation could probably be made that we're sounding a little bit like a broken record at this point. We keep finding new ways of saying, hey, look, folks, like housing is becoming more expensive. It is becoming more unaffordable. And so, at the risk of sounding like that broken record, it is important for us to continue to call this forward. So, what are, in your all's views, what is this challenge and what is at stake for the Houston area if we don't address this housing affordability issue? And Mike, I'll throw that question your way first.
I'll start and maybe start with what I've done the prior 5 years, which is when you look at homelessness and the increasing homelessness across the United States, it is clearly the issue of not adequate and not enough affordable housing. So if homelessness is the result of many, many failed systems, affordable housing is a system that needs to grow. I appreciate what the Kinder Institute is doing by making us focus on housing becoming more and more affordable. All of us know that. We know that from our children who are trying to buy their first homes, from the individual cost of these homes. It is a serious problem. And one, I appreciate the Kinder Institute pointing out the problem, but more importantly, I appreciate the Kinder Institute and many other entities that are working to say, what do we do differently? And that's what I'd like to focus on today. What are we doing differently?
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mike. Allison, thoughts on this? What is at stake here for Houston if we aren't doing something about our affordable housing?
We've got to recognize that Harris County is the 3rd largest county in the U.S. by area. So all of these years, we've had a luxury of having a lot of land at a very low cost to build homes. And we have maybe relied a lot on on the mortgage system that pre-COVID, pre-2022, very low interest rates for home mortgages. And that is no longer the case. While other counties and urban cities that you noticed on the map have started to make changes because their innovation and business practices have changed to meet the needs. The result or the stake of us not doing anything is that our very strong workforce, our hard-working Houstonians that work for our major corporation and industries within Harris County, they're driving and living in other counties that are more affordable, like Montgomery County and Fort Bend. They're actually taking their paychecks and their other revenue away from Harris County. So our economy depends on a very strong, affordable housing plan. Harris County and its largest city, Houston, I say we have a call to action to build ideas and use the innovations from other cities, proven home styles, proven different materials, as well as in our banking institutes to be creating more innovative mortgage products that would help and support our community.
I'm hearing, the consequences of us not doing something have both a human toll, and that's the homelessness challenge, and then there's the economic toll, and that is that people will go to where they're able to afford, and what that does to the Houston economy from that, and it's sort of already been brought up. The one of the components of this year's report is that people seem to be moving into some of these more suburban spaces, and so maybe pivoting into that, like. So, this year's report is acknowledging Harris County's neighbors, Montgomery County, Fort Bend County, are playing an increasing role in supplying home ownership. And so, Christa, if I could throw a question to you perhaps here, like, what can Houston and Harris County do to learn from some of what's taking place in these surrounding counties? How does Houston and Harris County still compete in this sector?
Sure, absolutely. I believe part of the reason people are moving outwardly is because there's more amenities available in addition to the affordability of the home. Me personally, as someone who lives in the inner city, specifically in Fifth Ward, I don't have access to a healthy grocery store, good transportation, a park, the quality of life amenities that typical families and just people want to experience, so I can go and meet my neighbors. But I absolutely still want to stay in a community where I want to build it up. I want to be a part of that solution and not just complain. But I totally understand generations of families are tired of just waiting and not really seeing the results that they desperately need and deserve. So I believe part of it is there really needs to be more of a placemaking component instead of just building a product and moving on to the next site and the next lot of the next acreage development. But I also believe there needs to be a strategy, which Allison alluded to, and saying that there needs to be a plan. We need to have, I personally adopted the capital absorption framework, which was created by the Center for Community Investment, which basically says that, one, we need to define what are our shared priorities. And by shared, not just us as agencies and the nonprofits, but also the communities that we serve. We also need to define what is the pipeline of deals and projects in order to achieve them. So that's my deals, that's Allison's deals, that's what the housing department's working on and beyond. And then we also need to have an enabling environment to get the deals done. So whether that's the policies and the contracts that need to be achieved and accomplished, the politicians, the state level, the federal level, it needs to be all in alignment. So there really has to be a strategic approach in how we're achieving these developments and not just doing one-offs here and there and then just moving on to the next site.
Yeah, so like recognizing that part of what is attractive in these outlying counties is not just the land, it is the development, it is the places that are being built there. Are there other things that perhaps are attracting people into more suburban spaces? I don't know, Mike, if there was anything there, to build on what Christa's kind of calling out of what might be pulling people into these other spaces.
Well, again, I agree with where Christa is going with that. I personally, this is not a housing issue, but it shows you the impact. I believe families are driven by education and the quality of education. I think we need to invest heavily in education in Houston and Harris County. do whatever it takes to have strong public education here. And it's a problem. We live in a state that is not focused on public education, and we need to make those changes. Businesses, philanthropy needs to fight for that, needs to fight for dollars. You cannot adequately educate somebody on $8,000 a year per student. It takes a lot more. And so again, I'm an advocate of affordable housing and education that's quality education. Being a low tax, low service state is problematic. We should be spending our rainy day funds on public education.
It's a very fair point, and absolutely, residents of Houston and Harris County could not agree more in recognizing the importance of spending more to make sure that we are providing quality education to our children, to our next generation. When we think about place building and we think about some of the amenities, the town centers, the parks and green spaces, the education systems, there is a price tag with this. Are there examples where, while that price tag might come to mind, there are, examples of affordability, affordable developments taking place in some of these different spaces? Allison, I kind of want to throw that question at you, maybe.
Thank you. As we are looking, I'm very proud to talk about an idea. It was a concept plan that we've been working on for a while with the city and the county to create that livable space based on community input, with finding values that the community found that they wanted to have. So Houston Habitat is developing a community. It is like Texas, that's 127 acres. And to use it wisely, we were listening, we're building 468 single family homes. We're able to offer 12-acre parks because green space is so important. When we get completed, we'll be able to have over 500 units of senior and multifamily. But this was all designed to create the residents for all stages of their life and where they are. We also are in an area on northeast part of Houston that is very low in amenities. It is a desert in all ways. So when we collaborate and we talk about it, it is a public, private, and nonprofit partnership. And our goal is to be able to amenitize it so that it will have healthcare, it'll have banking, it'll have library, innovation, and really drive the economic core of the entire area, but with the focus on home ownership and residents who are interested in that, again, like Christa mentioned, this whole quality of community building, which, by the way, is one of our assets because we are such a diverse population in Harris County.
So that's a great reminder. When we're talking about this isn't just something that we're talking about this place building and these amenities and opportunities here. This isn't just about talking about what we're building for people who are making a particular amount, but that this could be done in a way with communities to bring in these resources and bring in these amenities for everyone to enjoy, regardless of earnings. I so appreciate that being brought forward there, Allison. So, we're talking about affordability. We're thinking about place-based, place building, development, and in some ways these ideas kind of, we need to grapple with this question around gentrification, that when we're looking at spots in Houston and Harris County where perhaps maybe there is still affordable-ish places to buy in, on the one hand, that investment is something that can help rejuvenate, but when done without policies and protections, runs the very, very real risk and the unfortunate, historically documented history of displacement there. And so how do we strike this balance of going through and both making neighborhood preservation as well as investment good for everyone? And, Christa, you teased us with this a little bit earlier, kind of in your introduction. So I want to throw this at you first. Like, how do we want to think about this for Houston and Harris County?
For sure. And I did mention, yes, in my teaser about gentrification with displacement needs to be hand in hand in that conversation. And coming from the Bay Area of California and seeing firsthand how the technology boom of Google and social media and all these innovative technologies came to Silicon Valley. And at one point it was like, okay, well, they're over there, we're over here. You didn't really mindfully think that it was impacting. But more that it grew, and the workforce of that community could not keep up, is when really the acceleration of displacement took place, because people were unable to keep up with the demand of the jobs, nor were they qualified for the jobs. And then the appreciation of the land continued to go up. So here in Houston, in terms of where we are, if we don't think about how we're also incorporating the economic development component and workforce development, which I will argue also aligns with what Mike was saying about education, because it's not just education of children, it's of the workforce that we're building to make them adults so that they're ready to buy a home. And as the homes continue to appreciate in value, the goal is that their income will appreciate as well, right? Obviously, the seniors are a different circumstance, and we need to be intentional about different protective measures for them in terms of our policies or whatnot. But if we're not thinking about the holistic picture, which is community development, right? Not just housing, but housing and community development, is tying in the rest of the components of how we're making sure that we're building an ecosystem of impact, and we're funneling the money to be sure that it's not just this product, but it's also an impactful initiative of how we're moving forward in this overall absorption of capital investment strategy.
So very much appreciate calling forward that, as we think about the gentrification and the investments, that we think about it holistically, not just about a singular building in a neighborhood, but thinking about this as something that can be done with a neighborhood and those residents that are in there. It sort of raises some thoughts about policies, perhaps, and like what are things that we could be doing. And Allison, this question's headed your way. I'm wondering, like, what perhaps are some policies that we could be thinking about as an area that help both stimulate that investment and that rejuvenation without the displacement piece?
I can't agree more. We are large, and think about the impact if we could get this right, correct? So if we could look at our whole holistically, Harris County, and dive into the ways that purposeful policies are produced with listening to community, looking at us. We don't have zoning here. I know I'm talking to the choir, but we can also use that as an asset, right? Which means we can modify and work within the systems that we have to now create the communities that our communities want. So the gentrification question is quite sad, because as the housing prices go up and the families who have lived historically in these communities forever don't have the ability to pay for their taxes if they're elderly, or don't have the ability to keep up with increased fees. Those are things that we can make a policy, a determination of families that are historically in an area, families that have lived in their home for 40 years, have the ability for us to change our taxation through HCAD, through other mechanisms of taxation, that we can say, okay, we are going to lower your taxes, not make it as high. Be strategic about it, and then incentivize the other economic drivers that come in. Please, let's don't give them a tax abatement, right? Let's let everyone pay their fair share for the ability that you're going into a wonderful area close to downtown, close to the medical center, and you are being an economic driver as an industry. Those are the partners that we want you to be able to proportionally. And those are all policies that we can make on our own. Also, from the state level, there are several levers that we could start to work on. There's a bootstrap product that comes out, which is a very affordable zero interest mortgage for homeowners. It is a very small fund. It's $3 million. It's a revolving fund. We could get our advocates, all of us as advocates, to go and speak to our state legislatures about how this particular product is a ongoing entrepreneurial style way of getting homeowners and affordable houses built within cities.
a lot of solutions offered up there. Thank you, Allison, for that. Mike, are there other things?
I would like to, yeah, I would like to add, first, Allison, the idea of the property tax issue is an important idea. I'll give you an example. When we in the city use disaster funding to fix someone's house, and that house is fixed up, then the value goes up, and it makes it more difficult for the person on a fixed income, low income, elderly to stay in that home. And that's just one small thing. The second part is funding from HUD and other people are so highly regulated and so difficult to use, and really so small in comparison to past decades. I think we need to be talking to our federal officials on a daily basis about what can they do to increase the funding for affordable houses all the way through homeowner down payment assistance, a number of products that are great and very successful, both for the single family and multifamily building. We have to do that. And I just want to put a pitch out there. We're talking about single family. We need multifamily construction in the city too. It's a issue that you have to have that for people who cannot yet move into single family homes. It's clear what people want. They want single family homes, but we need both of those. Last is permitting. Anything we can do for everybody across the economic scale about permitting for housing, we need to do it. We need to invest in a very fast permitting system. That's something we could do better than other cities.
That's such a great point to raise, Mike, and I appreciate sort of that acknowledgement that this housing affordability challenge is both something that people are living and experiencing incredibly locally, and there are local things we can be doing to help to begin moving us in that direction to address these affordability challenges. And I also think, Mike, you called for something very important to make sure that we're not losing sight of there, which is the role that support from outside matters beyond just that local space. That we are almost certainly not going to resolve and solve this problem using solely local resources. It's just too big of a problem. And so maybe segueing there, we to think about how Houston is situated in this broader landscape of some of the housing challenges that exist. Yes, very much locally here as well as across the country. So, when we talk about Houston's affordability, we talk about some of this opportunity we have here in Houston. On the one hand, as Steve was sharing with us in his presentation earlier, when you look at the affordability gap between what a typical Houstonian can afford and our current housing markets, I think if I'm recalling correctly, with the exception of the San Antonio example, our neighbors a little bit further to the west, every other city that we were calling out, the Dallases, the Atlantas, the Austins, the Chicagos, they are experiencing similar challenges with their housing affordability and arguably larger challenges. So on the one hand, things may not look so bad here, but then also on the other hand, you have this national low income housing coalition who put out this report recently where they identified the Houston metro area as the second worst in the entire country for offering housing to very low income households. And so, we look at it both from a relative perspective, seemingly there's an opportunity for us to do something here to continue to have Houston be affordable, while also other indicators suggesting that for some of our neighbors and our friends and our community members earning on that lower end, we're already quite behind the ball. And then I guess all of this has to be sort of acknowledged within the context of the Houston area leading the nation in housing permitting. We are building here. And so throwing around a couple of different pieces of information there, but what is missing here? We're building, we're still kind of more affordable than other cities, and yet very locally, it does not feel affordable. What is missing, Mike?
Well, that study was such a great study. And what it focused on was those individuals who had 30% or lower AMI. And when you do building, when you do housing, for those individuals, and this is just the fact of the matter, it takes 100% subsidy. We have to have all subsidy other than a very small amount that the individual put in, because you're talking about the people in the lowest economic demographics. And so those take 100% subsidy. As you move up to 120% of AMI, it takes very little or no subsidy. So that's the issue. And in Texas, we missed the boat on that subsidy. We do not have expanded Medicaid, which would allow, in many other states, they use some of that for housing. We missed the boat on and on again from a state level, that we don't have adequate subsidy for those people in the 30% and below. And it's something we need to work on, and it is something that's seriously problematic in our area for those people. Remembering half the people in Harris County don't have $400 in the event of emergency. That's a serious problem, but we have to fix the housing problem. In other countries, in other cities across the world, they're doing a better job. In Tokyo, there's very little, it's a very expensive city, but there's very little homelessness and adequate housing. We can do that if we focus on the housing and make sure there's adequate funding there, which there's not at this point.
Thank you so much for diving a little bit more into that report, acknowledging and recognizing that we oftentimes look to the market for helping to resolve challenges. And so often the market resolves those challenges. And yet, Mike, I appreciate you calling forward that we are increasingly finding ourselves, for some folks in our community, it is incredibly and increasingly difficult for a market solution here. Christa, beyond maybe the funding piece, what else do we need to be thinking about when it comes to solving some of this Houston housing challenges here?
For sure. And like you said, part of it is the market, but I think the answer is right in the mirror, right? It starts with us. It starts with our colleagues. It starts with us sitting at the same table. Can we start there? Can we all be in the same room to talk about what resources you have, what your strengths are, and then we can identify what the gaps are? That's never been done before. And I believe that it really requires our strategies. Right? We can have a local policy that requires affordable housing. For every new development, there's a percentage that has to be. That's not uncommon in most other cities. We can also align together, especially on the land bank side. And I personally spend a lot of time studying land banks, and specifically the Metro Atlanta Land Bank. I've talked to the Cook County Land Bank in Chicago, Detroit, New York, and they all administer all the surplus land for the government, for the city, the county, the school district. That's an easy asset that we have control over, that we can activate expeditiously, but we literally have to pay to take city-owned land currently, but we're funded by the city. It just doesn't make sense, right? So there's some things locally that we could do. Absolutely, we need to fight nationally. We need to fight more on the state level, but we also need to sit down and really stop being so close chest on what we're working on and start sharing our notes so we can sharpen each other's pencils and work as a team. I could keep going. I know I got to save space for other people, but I really believe that we have all the right pieces right here, and the time is right now. We have great leadership in place, and I strongly agree with the director and the mayor that we can be the most affordable city in America, and I'm ready to do it.
Ooh, that is a call to action for sure. And in that call to action, both the acknowledgement of local responsibility and learning from others, and you called out Atlanta as an example of another city you've learned out. Allison, are there other spaces you may be aware of that again, like, we want Houston to be the most affordable city to live in America? Where else might we want to look to learn lessons from elsewhere?
Well, the advantage of Houstonians is that we have the ability, and many times, if you've looked at disaster, we have been creative. We are leaders in how to do disasters. That's one piece that no one can take that away. But there are other cities that have had more time into this housing crunch, that have found ways to work in partnership with public, private, and nonprofits, so that everybody leans in and works together. Habitat has 1,100 affiliates across the nation. just like Christa, I've looked at our partners to see what they have done so that they are serving their citizens in the way that they want to be served. Innovative housing is not new. We have been doing the same type of home for a long time with a 5,000 square foot home, single family. That's our vision. We can reframe our vision because we can all do it together and use land to increase our density. The things that I was thinking about was to rethink housing type. You know, can the square footage in the house on the inside be smaller, but then the public space, the green space, be shared with multiple, not having having a shared space versus everyone having a fence around what we consider as a home. Can we advocate very strongly for every home that is built within our jurisdiction to be energy efficient, more efficient, so that the home owner in the 30 years will be paying less for their energy bills, and the repair bills will be reduced? Because going forward, at the initial part of building, we build with fortified roofs. We talk about more Energy Star, using the resources that we have to build that home stronger for the family to maintain their home ownership for the long run. And then can we build houses faster? The money part has really gotten expensive when we drag our projects on for months and years. That is a cost that we do not need to have. We can be more resilient in our timing of our money. So making homes to be able to get on the ground faster, be healthier, and go at a lower cost. And then again, I'm going to advocate, just like Mike said, about the subsidies for families. Using our money and our subsidies to invest in families is a great return on our public investment. Those are families that work, they live, they spend, they are strong they vote. They are very, very a great way to not think of the now, think of the future, because your dollars and today's dollars will go farther if we start to invest the right amount of subsidies to get families to have home ownership. And then again, lasting affordability, just what Christa was talking about. We are on the cutting edge again. We've not turned over to the red like we saw on the map. We're still in the blue, which means it's for all of us now to think together at the same table and for us to all use our resources wisely. And I'm even talking about the back end of our homes, right? The how to keep lasting affordability with land trusts, how to keep our banks, call our banks and our mortgage institutes and say, how can we have a better product for families that are hardworking, but their income is the same, but they're going to benefit and give our community so much more? Do you want to know if we have the answers? We can do it. That's what Houston does best. What we do is solve problems best. And I am grateful that the Kinder Institute actually called this out for home ownership this year, because the timing could not be better. So thank you.
Daniel, I'd like to just add two other items to that. One is insurance. People's insurance are driving up dramatically, and we in government at the state level, federal level, need to figure that out and get that right, because it's a big part of home ownership. The second is when we talked about the county's work and the city's work, I do want to focus on the state work. The TDHCA, Texas Department of Housing Community Development, have a Texas home buyers program, and we want to expand that. And I think it's important people look at that and ask for expanse of that.
Thank you for adding those things. And it is an important moment to recognize that there are programs that are out there, and sometimes it is about connecting information to people to make sure that they're knowing about what is available. But these call to actions, woo, very, very motivating. I am so appreciative of that. So turning our attention now, we've got a little bit less than 15 minutes left here. And so we've got questions pouring in through our Q&A button, obviously. And so unfortunately, almost certainly won't have time to get to all of them, but a couple of questions that have come up to the top. And I think we've heard a couple of these, but it seems like this gentrification concern is something that has really caught on to some people, and understandably so. And so, Christa, earlier you again in that call to action and this idea of investing in ourselves, investing in our communities with our communities. Are there examples of stuff happening right now that's reviving parts of the core city, maybe parts of the core county, to call attention to?
Sure. I can speak on what we're working on, which is brownfield redevelopment. That is something new for the organization. We started about 2 years ago or so when I took over as the CEO, and we started launching our brownfield assessment grant that we received from the EPA. That was $600,000 that we invested into various neighborhoods in the East End and near North Side and to the Northeast area. And now that has grown to $5.5 million because now we're cleaning up a former trash incinerator site, turning that into a green space. We also have initiated some of the pre-development work for Project Yellow Cab, which is the Yellow Cab headquarters in near North Side. And we're hopefully today closing on that with another partner in order to make active 6 acres. We have another site on the East End that we're looking to turn into housing. So my point is that we're an oil and gas city that was funded off of the trade, right? And off of labor because of the port, right? And that's how these neighborhoods were formed. But there's a lot of contamination left from that initial start of Houston and how we've grown and naturally sprawled out into the other areas. And there's no one there to address it. So part of the reason also why there's vacant land in the urban core, especially in the disinvested areas, because it's contaminated. And us being the only governmental entity and 501c3 nonprofit focused on community development rose my hand and said, let's do it. Let's expand our priorities. Let's work with our partners. And more importantly, work with the community so they can tell me what needs to be done with this site, because it's absolutely not my place. I'm just here to help secure the funds, help work with the partners, and then make their dreams come to life. So that's something that we've been doing in order to turn these eyesores and just to be honest, intentional, hurtful things of contaminating these Black and brown neighborhoods and turning it into power and into sustainable solutions for affordable housing and other community development initiatives.
Christa, just for anybody that maybe isn't tied into the housing and environmental justice space, brownfields, could you real fast, just what are you talking about when you say brownfields?
Sure. So brownfields is not the same as a superfund. A superfund is an actual designated contaminated site by the government. A brownfield is just the perception, which could be a former dry cleaner or a gas station, or have just some remnants of what could have been and that has sprawled off into the soil or whatnot. So it's just saying that you're investigating the potential contaminants. So not in the red when it comes to the Superfund components. That's a whole nother level of the remediation that has to take place.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christa. Mike, you brought it up earlier, and we've got a question that's kind of come up around the insurance rates. You know, there have been some pretty big insurance companies that have told Florida, we're out. We're not insuring homes here anymore. I have to plead ignorant here. I'm not sure that that's been told to Texas. But how close are we to something like that? And what are we going to do about insurance rates when we have all of the evidence showing that those floodings and the rains are only going to intensify, insurance claims are only going to continue to go up? You know, what are we to do about insurance here in the Houston area?
I don't have those answers, but my hope is that both the think tanks like Kinder and others will begin looking at this. The legislature looks at insurance every year, and we need to be asking them what kind of programs and processes, and we need to look at other states. You know, this is one of those things that we have great developers here, and we rely heavily on the developers. We've moved away from public building of housing. It's all done through public-private partnerships, which I think is highly effective and very good. And we need to find out ways that the public, how does the public weigh in? How do we deal with this insurance crisis? And at the same time, lean on what Allison spoke to, which is build homes that are insurable. That they may not be as cheap on the first day, but they're less expensive on the last day. So we have to look at that, but I think it's real. I don't think Houston's in the same situation that Florida's in, but we do have to keep finding ways to grow. We're a growth-oriented city. We're lucky, at the other side, I just finished an article about Phoenix, where they don't have enough water. I would rather be in our shape than theirs. So it's a conundrum, but I think there are legislative and congressional answers to this housing issue, to this insurance issue. I do not have them, but I'm certainly beginning to study those.
Calling it forward is a good first step. Let's be thinking about it. Let's be calling it out in public domains and areas, and finding those answers. And so, Mike, I appreciate that space there. Allison, a question that's popped up that I think speaks in some ways to some of the topics and ideas that you were putting forward earlier has to do with, people are in Houston. There's not necessarily maybe we're not addicted to single family homes the way we used to be, but we're also not really trying to live on top of each other like some East Coast cities. And so how do we find this happy medium of a little more density, leveraging our green space, giving safe spaces for children to be outside? Again, you think about high rises on East Coast cities, families, where do those kids play? Where do those kids grow? Where do they live life? How do we find this balance here in Houston?
I think when we are talking about amenitizing and having more of a complete area, what Christa mentioned, she loves to live where she wants to live. She needs more there. She needs to have a grocery or a garden or a play area. We are so privileged to be able to have such a diverse population. Everyone has the ability to tell each other what's important about their community, keep those essence, and then to realize that together we're stronger. So parks become important. Amenities like basic amenities. Right now, if we were looking at it and analyzing what our economic drivers are, there are places that need more grocery. There's people that need more banking opportunities, healthcare opportunities, but we need to know what the community wants. So I really envision a town where we celebrate each of our different types of communities and be able to offer to that person who wants to live there those the things that are most important for them. And I do believe the days of the 5,000 square foot single family home is over with for the majority of Houstonians if they want to work and live in a fabulous, robust community, Harris County, which is bringing so much opportunity to them in other ways. The trade-off has to be there. And we can do it by asking people what they want and then looking outward to other cities to see what they have done.
So we've heard about developers and the role of developers and good developers that Houston has here, and we've heard even from Christa some of the work that the land bank is doing, Allison some of the work that you all with Habitat are doing, and Mike has his finger on the button there within the city to get some stuff done. And so, what could neighborhoods be doing to attract good developers to them? Not looking for the cookie cutters, maybe not looking, but they want the character, they want the investment, they want the affordability brought in. How do you do that so that you're creating opportunity and investing in your community? What is it communities could be doing?
I don't necessarily believe that's the community's responsibility. I think it's ours as the policymakers. This is my opinion, because the communities, we may be a city with no zoning, but we are full of plans. Okay, every neighborhood has a plan, and I would argue, please tell me who does not have a plan. Okay, and if it's not, I'm sure it's probably in the file closet at the planning and development department as someone who used to work there. So the communities have already said what they wanted, but no one has actually picked it up to say, and we're going to do this, and I need you to do this with us. That's the problem, is there's not a leader to help convene the different parties, to help explain to the developers or this is what they're asking for, because that's not their strength, community engagement, and it shouldn't be. But you should bring in someone who knows how to speak to the neighborhood and speak to the government and know how to work through the performance development. Like, that's not their strength, and we shouldn't make them do that. I think we just have to create the policies and the parameters to help educate them on this is what they mean when they're saying, single family, because that can be interpreted several different ways. And I think that if we have the requirement, and you don't need zoning to do that, but if you have the requirement when it comes to the different components of whether the density, just like the Livable Places initiative just passed, right? Whether we have the historic preservation components, we have overlay districts in order to inform design. And as someone who advocates for design justice, that's basically what we need to do, is help to interpret to them, this is what needs to happen, and then they'll do it. I don't see them really pushing back once you have the conversation, but the communities have already said it. I don't think we should put anything more on their shoulders. We just need to bring them with us when we're actually getting the solution done.
Excellent. Thank you, Christa. Okay, so can we do a real quick round robin? Last thoughts, last words, calls to action. What do you want people to walk out of here today knowing and thinking about from this conversation? Mike, can I throw it to you to start?
Absolutely. Collaboration and capacity building. Those are two things we need to work on. We need to work on it again. City, state, county, really focused on that. I think that's collaboration, developers, banks. We need to just be better at collaboration. Capacity building. We need to build faster and more. And yes, I agree with all the conversation we've had about community work, but a scale is so important. We need to find out how to build faster. Having people live in substandard housing, having people live homeless is not what we want to do. Houston does this right. We need to have the housing, and we need to make sure that we have adequate housing going up in Harris County and in Houston, because if you look around the country, yes, there can be great housing development on the outskirts of cities. Without a strong center city, we're lost.
Christa?
Man, I mean, there's so many calls to action. I do absolutely agree with what the director said about collaboration and capacity building. Just want to be sure that we're building them in the compassion. So we're not making it seem as if we're trying to do something without the community, which is why I've always strongly advocated for them to be a part of the informed decision-making process, because they're the ones that's going to help pick up the torch past us, right? And then as we're training new leaders to sit in our seats in our respective organizations, that also ties together as well. So the strategy, the other partners who want to help us nationally and locally, and us, just like I said, just sitting at the same table and putting our egos and our fears and what we know and what we don't know to the side, and just workshopping it out, and then starting, right? Because you don't want to have analysis paralysis where you're not actually moving, you're just sitting and thinking and trying to strategize so much to where nothing's actually progressing. Let's pilot some stuff. Let's do it now, and then let's learn from the lessons to see what priorities need to shift.
And Allison?
First off, I want to thank the Kinder Institute. This document is what I've been dreaming of for 5 years, because the data drives so many decisions. And let's use this community, like people on the call, let's use this document to go out and get others to support and be advocates with us. A louder voice is what we need. The solutions that we have bright, wonderful, smart people within our city. We also know that we want them to stay in our county and our city, live, work, and play. So we've got to use what we know, use the data, and then get going. Again, this timeline has to get quicker. We have to look at housing in a different way. I think the time is now because of the national crisis, but we being Houston, we can make that change. Harris County has many times been challenged with we can't do it, and we proved them wrong. So I say, let's get at it and let's show them what we can do now.
collaboration, community, compassion, and let's get going. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, panelist members, for this fantastic discussion. Thank you to our audience for all of the wonderful questions. Obviously, did not get a chance to answer all of them, but thank you so much for putting them forward. Thank you to Wells Fargo for their continued support of this research on these critical issues. And now the work continues. Please follow the Kinder Institute for more of our research on housing and neighborhoods, as well as other critical conversations happening for today. The Kinder Institute's next event is going to be July 31st, when we will be convening with educators and other stakeholders to discuss pre-K participation here in the Houston area and how that relates to student outcomes as part of our PNC Education Engagement Series. We welcome you to join that again, July 31st. Please download and explore this year's report, dig into our data dashboard, and find other resources from the Kinder Institute at kinder.rice.edu. Thank you all so much. Thank you again to the panelists. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of the day.